Hey, it is Wednesday, August 26th. Summer is almost over. We're seeing Halloween candy at the grocery stores, which I say, where's my Labor Day candy? You know, today our guest is Chris Burnett, former candidate for the United States Congress, Maryland's 6th District. Welcome to the show. And I understand you're working on some really, really cool innovation projects.
Well, first, it is great to be back. I love doing this show. I always enjoy these conversations. I'm glad that we've got Jackie on with us again tonight. And I'm looking forward to wherever we take this conversation, because there is certainly a lot to talk about. I can't believe it's already the end of August. My kids are back in school, and we're still kind of unpacking midterm primary and then what we're going to expect in November. So I'm looking forward to tonight.
Yeah, let's start off with.
I feel like we should start with the news of the day. I feel like, which was the big ruling coming out about the redistricting effort. And we know this is only step one. It's going to go to the Maryland Supreme Court. But what's your take on that? Are you surprised? Are you not surprised?
I'm a little surprised because it's the right outcome. I was expecting the opposite. I was expecting that, well, this is what should happen as a matter of law. And then Maryland would do what it does, which is sort of with the supermajority thumb its nose and says, hey, well, we make the rules so we can break the rules and just deal with it. So I was, quite frankly, I was pleasantly surprised that they did the right thing. It said, look, there was a rule you made, you didn't comply with it. Now we're not going to delay how we prepare for the November election because you're putting process ahead of people's right to vote. So right. I think it's going to go to the Maryland Supreme Court. Whether I do not think they're going to delay the ballots. I think this is essentially a done deal. I would not expect them to prevent the drafting and preparation of ballots to hear a legal challenge on appeal of a question of process. Because essentially, if they don't get these ballots done, your military folks overseas and your mail-in ballots, those will not be timely. And I see that as more important than addressing.
We're 75 days. Yeah, we're 75 days from election day, frankly. And and what the sad thing is, they'll try and probably ram it through session is what they'll do. What they can't get done at the ballot box, they'll ram it through.
Yeah, but I agree. They're not going to push it off. And the Supreme Court is still majority Hogan appointees. So we should be okay there.
And as I've always defaulted, the rule of law is what defines us more than anything else as a nation. And when we lose sight of that on either side, we compromise the legitimacy of the government that we formed. And I'm reassured by these instances where either folks have done the right thing, or in this case, the court ruled properly. Not because it was Republican or Democrat, but it was simply an interpretation of the law. It would have been applied to both sides. So I'm glad for the ruling, and I'm looking forward to the Supreme Court upholding it and then not seeing it on the ballot this fall.
Absolutely.
That's true. Yeah, and which all kind of ties in, with basically the elections coming up. We've got a lot of stuff, and you had some great ideas. And let's talk about your innovation corridors, like when you became our speaker at Pizza and Politics last month. You had some great things to say about the innovation corridor. Are you able to expand more on that?
Well, first, you truly caught me off guard. I showed up on my bike trying to beat the rain, and you're like, great, you're here. We got a speaker. But I'm always happy to talk about the innovation corridor because it's an issue that I think we need to lead on. And when I was thinking about today, I put out a post, trying to encourage people to listen tonight. And I started to find that this is the main talking point of the Democrat Socialists of America. So whenever we find ourselves aligned with that group of extreme left activists, we have a problem. We need to revisit what it is we're trying to move forward as a party. So I realize this is controversial right now, and I'm no longer a candidate, and I don't think it would have mattered. I would have maintained my position throughout this process because it's the right thing to do from a national security point of view. It's the right thing to do for economic development. And most importantly, it is the only pathway to address affordability in Maryland. This is not, I'm taking the side of Westmoreland. No, this was saying this is a clear path where Maryland can lead. And I felt strongly enough about it. And I think I've even said it to you offline. You know, I would rather try to lead the right path on an issue and lose for the right reason than win for the wrong reason. Because then you're still putting the interest of your constituents and the voters ahead of your own personal interest or ego. So on this issue, I think Maryland has an opportunity to finally address the affordability crisis that's been created by our supermajority in Annapolis by doing what Republicans do best, and that is lean in on the free market, deregulate, protect local residents, empower local residents, but most importantly, take advantage of this one moment in time where we've aligned national security priorities with economic development in areas that are mostly dilapidated or being unused. And that is brownfields up and down the federal highway system in Western Maryland.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, we have all these, it's also, there's a national security component to this also that, data centers are more than just AI, but AI is a big portion. And all these talks, and I don't know your thoughts, all these folks that are saying, oh, we need to do a pause. Why are we pausing AI development? Do we want the Chi-Coms to catch up to with where we are? I mean, right now we've got the high cards. Let's keep the high cards and keep innovating, frankly. Do we need guardrails? Yes, but we don't need to stop innovating. I mean, frankly,
you're both exactly right. Like our enemies are not going to stop. This is something that is going to happen. Yeah. And whether you know it or not, you're actually using data centers. So as long as these companies are able to provide the resources that they need to keep it going without draining
a lot of data center use.
Exactly. Without draining the resources from the community, and we're not eminent domaining people's farmland to put them there. And like you said, we've got plenty of places we can put them. We should 100% be leading on this.
Yeah. And it goes back to, we've talked about this before where, I realized that I couldn't run on a military record alone. I couldn't run on empty platitudes of accountability, transparency, and integrity. Those are great. Those are bumper stickers. Mm-hmm. But this was my value proposition. And the reason why I was so comfortable running on it is it was solving a complex problem that was going to protect residents. What you have in Adamstown is what happens whenever you don't think through a plan. And you have this knee-jerk reaction, and you've got money signs and that's all that the planners and some of the leadership were seeing. They saw tax dollars at the expense of local residents. If we do this right, not only do we maintain our tech supremacy in the world, not only do we support our national security priorities as outlined in the National Security Strategy, we'll be developing national critical infrastructure and creating the jobs that have been lacking in Western Maryland for decades. We just have to lean into this and accept that with any great leap forward, there's going to be risk. There's going to be uncertainty. But if we do this the right way, we could position Maryland to prosper in the AI economy that's coming one way or the other. Mm-hmm. And the question that seems to never get asked in Maryland is, why do we have so many people on SNAP? Why do we have so many people relying on state and federal programs? And it's because you've regulated so many industries out of existence. You now have people that are wholly dependent on handouts. We create opportunity for people to be employed, to create businesses that support this development. Suddenly, we've addressed not only affordability, but we've created the opportunity that brings the sense of achievement and dignity that's been lacking. And as I traveled across Western Maryland, I was continually confronted by this hopelessness feeling of we don't have a voice, we don't even belong, why even bother? Well, of course, that inspired me to work even harder to make this a viable solution so that we can fix what has been a supermajority vanity project for 20 or 30 years.
So has there been any ability on your end to make progress with this? Because I feel like this isn't because it's such a new thing, this hasn't reached partisan lines yet. So have you made any contact with people maybe in the lobbying space for data centers or some of the Democrats in the state to be able to maybe advance this a little bit?
Well, and that's sort of the phase that I'm in right now. And that's a great segue, quite honestly. What I'm now looking at doing is either standing up a PAC for the innovation corridor so that we can enter in these discussions and leverage sort of an education and issue PAC, to raise money and either educate or create awareness. But I've also reached out to Senator McCormick's office in Pennsylvania. I grew up in Pittsburgh. And every time I go back home to visit my dad and my brothers, there's a template that they're putting together that is very similar to the innovation corridor, just on a smaller scale. And they're taking old steel mills that are these massive brownfields that haven't been developed in 30 or 40 years. They're partnering with Carnegie Mellon and the University of Pittsburgh to create this pathway for AI and quantum research to then put in data centers, AI, quantum, and advanced manufacturing. And they're starting to discuss co-locating energy production, whether it's small modular reactors or other sources, to prevent any burden whatsoever on the local residents. And this just gets back to proper planning. If we look at this and you say up front, as a fixed cost to any developer, you have to include water treatment so that you're treating residential sewage, purifying it, using that for cooling, recycle it internally, and only discharge drinkable water. Now you've enhanced local utilities. Whenever you require them to include their own renewable clean energy, they create a demand on the Department of Energy to expedite the licensing and permitting for small modular reactors that are commercially viable, that are now just sitting on the shelf waiting for implementation. The US military just picked up a small modular reactor from the factory it was built in, put it on, I think, a C-5, which is the enormous transport planes, flew it across the country, plugged it in, and demonstrated the viability for an expeditionary use of a small modular reactor. Now, I realize that in the military, we assume a lot more risk than what we would want to put into a consumer or residential area. But that was proof of concept of taking this modular, scalable system and standing up an off-the-grid solution to energy-intensive industry. And that could be a data center, could be advanced manufacturing, anything from steel production to semiconductor production, and things that would outlive even the data centers themselves. And that's the AI and quantum research. And then more importantly, those high-paying advanced manufacturing jobs that are truly lacking.
Yeah, and these modular nuclear reactors, imagine also when there's a hurricane where all the power is out. You fly 2 or 3 of those, you've got these towns back up and running with minimal power.
And I think there's a real knowledge gap on small modular reactors in terms of how they run and just how incredibly safe they are. They have, and I'm not going to attempt to explain this from a nuclear physicist standpoint, but for purposes of our conversation, they are 10 times, 100 times safer than anything that they've put out in the past in terms of scale and production. In nuclear is also one of the safest forms of energy already. So you're talking about one of the safest, most efficient ways to produce energy, and this is even safer and scalable. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's a big point. Yeah, there's always this fear of the unknown or the fear of what was. And I think people hear nuclear energy and so many of them still think of like Chernobyl, which was in the 80s.
Yeah.
So like we've come such a long way since then, but people are so scared of it that we haven't been given a chance to demonstrate how revolutionary
basically every person that's against nuclear, they bring up 3 Mile Island, they bring up Chernobyl. The problem is there was no leak in at 3 Mile Island. It was just they needed to vent the steam. That's
and this is an issue. Again, I think Republicans, we can lead on this issue because we're supporting the free market. We understand that the economy, the fuel for the economy is energy production. That's always been true. It's going to be enormously true in the AI economy. There's simply no way around it. So whether it's consumer convenience, residential costs, or the impact on our national security, there's 1,000 reasons to do this. And unfortunately, we're not discussing, I think, all of the needs and benefits of leading on this issue. I feel like right now people are just trying to get reelected, and they're doing so at the expense of seizing an opportunity to run on growth, economic development, addressing some of our core values of supporting the free market, looking to deregulate, create opportunity, less dependency on the government. And then the last thing I'll say on the small modular reactors, not only have we seen mismanagement spike our energy costs, that's not going away. The mismanagement at the regional grid level and also at the Maryland level, not taking advantage of Calvert Cliffs, shutting down coal-fired power plants. This isn't going away. It's going to get worse. So not only does that create risk of compromise of our regional grid whenever you have only a handful of energy sources, you also don't have any growth at all is going to require additional demand on that already strained grid. When you decentralize production, and that is you have these small modular reactors that will support growth in advanced manufacturing or data centers, you'll have no impact whatsoever on the regional grid, And then if you were to get approval to plug it into the grid, you would offset energy prices in a way that would lower the cost by diversifying and securing our infrastructure, but more importantly, creating surplus that will offset the demand. These are complex problems. I'm not trying to simplify them, but these are issues that we need to lead on. And if you're going to run for office, I think you have to not only have an opinion, but you need to really dig into this and look at how you can solve these problems to help people.
Yeah. And the other point about being against data centers, Will Jawando in our county is against data centers. Brave
Which
Boy,
is reason to be for them, right?
Brave Boy is against it. We should think, why are we agreeing with the Democrats? Do we agree with the Democrats on anything? We used to agree with them on national security, but they don't agree with us on national security anymore. So there is no middle ground with the Democrats.
It's the fear. Right now, I feel like neither side has developed an actual opinion on it. They're just saying what they think that their constituents want to hear, because it's not a popular thing, right? Because they all think it means that their energy costs are going to go up, the water is going to go away. It's this fear of the unknown, the fear that's been driven into them by whatever they're seeing online. So I don't think any of these candidates actually have an actual stance on it, on what they're saying publicly. Yeah. They just don't want to piss off the voters.
And the water is a myth. It's using up all the water. That's a myth. It's basically like distilled water is what happens to that water. I don't know, Jackie, in chemistry class, if you ever tasted distilled water we used.
I don't taste that. I put that in my humidifier.
But that's what the byproduct of using it is. It's not heavy water. You listen to some of these people; they make it sound like it's heavy water that's coming out. Then you have the myth number 2 is that there's going to be no water left after this. A soybean farmer uses whole lot more water than a data center. Just like that water goes back into the ground, the water table is replenished, so does this.
But even more importantly, Dwight, these are issues that we can solve with deliberate planning. So if I'm a developer and I'm going to invest billions of dollars, and you tell me that I have a fixed cost and I plan to that fixed cost, I'll look to co-locate sewage treatment. I'll look to offset or eliminate the need for diesel generators with small modular reactors. And that is to either retrofit Adamstown with small modular reactors to eliminate the diesel concerns that families legitimately have, or you make it a requirement. So when you designate an opportunity zone, and let's use the Luke paper mill up in Allegheny County.
Over in Cumberland, yep.
We could just say, okay, we're going to designate an opportunity zone that will require you, private sector investment, to include a small modular reactor, water treatment that will take wastewater, treat it, recycle it internally so that you're not wasting it, you're not just discharging it. And then if you were to discharge any water, it will be purified to the level of exceeding state standards for drinkability or potability. And that becomes a fixed cost. They will either invest or not invest in when they see the opportunity that exists in terms of a skilled workforce, access to not just federal highways, but also infrastructure that supports data centers, AI, quantum computing, advanced manufacturing, whether it's rail line or existing high wire power lines. All of these things will be a factor that you present as an opportunity zone. But when you do this knee-jerk reaction and we're just happy somebody's going to invest, we get in Adamstown. And inevitably, there is legitimate pushback. I still am shocked at the fact that one of the solutions for the diesel generators was to put an air monitoring system in a classroom. In my opinion, that is too little, too late. If you're putting an air monitor into a grade school classroom that will alert you that you are being poisoned, that is too late. Because where are you just going to go home 50 feet away, a half a mile away? The same air that's been created, the bad air that's been created is going to affect you there just as it will in the classroom. So if you really want to address this, you put pressure on the private sector to develop the infrastructure at their expense, to be a good steward of the land, to partner with the community, and most importantly, create the jobs that we desperately need across Western Maryland that aren't going away. The AI economy scares a lot of people because I do think, like every major shift throughout history, there's going to be a job loss and job creation, and that uncertainty causes hesitation. But if we choose to stick our head in the sand and celebrate a moratorium, well, our adversaries are thrilled. because they want to slow down our development at any cost, because this is the Manhattan Project of our generation.
I think people just watch sci-fi movies.
What's that?
Too many sci-fi movies. People are scared of like Skynet.
Well, and a guy, that's a whole separate concern, quite frankly, of, you have the flock cameras, and you've got, how's data being used. Now, that's also a part of this, is that when you take deliberate steps to protect consumers, to protect residents in terms of physical development and data privacy, these are solvable problems, but they're complicated. And I think if you're going to run for office, you bear the responsibility of solving that problem and then articulating how you chose to solve it. We've come to expect so little of elected officials. It's almost like we just want them to be the angry mouthpiece of the mob and not actually solve anything, and just blame the other side, to just bury our heads in the sand and say, well, it's too hard, or it's those bad people over there. When the reality is people are still suffering. We still are paying for too much for water in Allegheny. We still don't have access to clean water across the Panhandle. We desperately need jobs. We have skyrocketing energy prices, and we don't have any of the infrastructure that we need to support the development. There's a way to align federal dollars that won't have to cause any fees, raise any taxes, leverage the CHIPS Act, the Jobs and Innovation Act, federal highway funds, partner at the state and county level to designate an opportunity zone, and now invite private sector investment. There are numbers as high as $40 to $60 billion that will be invested over the next 3 to 5 years. We're either going to choose to make that money available to the residents of Western Maryland, or it's just going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, they'll go to Pennsylvania, where they're actually working with the data center industry. Yeah. Or they'll go to, they'll go to Florida. Tennessee is using data centers to eliminate property taxes.
Yep.
Love that. So I want to pivot into what you're saying about the flock cameras, because that's another big thing that's hot right now. And what's your it's a tricky one, right? Or I guess for some people it's not so tricky where they stand, because the argument is we've been able to locate missing children, missing people, find criminals, but then, and I guess this goes back to the same kind of question that we had after 9/11. It's like, at what level are you willing to sacrifice your privacy for security?
And I've said it in the past, freedom and liberty is not you're free to do whatever you want. There's responsibility. And that we lose our freedom and liberty every time we concede that space in the name of security or safety. And we've become so risk averse that we don't want to bear the consequence of not having the most safe, the most secure, the most ridiculous solution. I do not like them. I realize that is maybe going to concede some of the transparency that we might want to have of a public space. But I can tell you, when I was in London with my son for a soccer tournament, it's the most heavily surveilled city in the world, and you feel it, you sense it
everywhere.
And that's not liberty. That's not freedom. I would rather bear the risk of not having some of these things in public spaces than to realize that every movement is being monitored, tracked, and recorded. At some point, we have to accept that our freedom is our responsibility to preserve, and the risk associated with living in a free society means that things might not always be perfect. We might have a victim of a crime that we could have prevented, but in preventing that crime, we might find ourselves giving away a part of something that is the foundation of this country. That's a controversial issue, but I feel like it's pretty clear what to me.
And I think there is a middle ground to flock cameras, because, first of all, the abuse is happening. It's not the camera manufacturers that's the abuse. It's the people that are monitoring that are abusing the flock cameras. We can put those in high crime. We already do this in high crime areas. You see those blue lights, those police cameras. We've already got them, and that's where we need them. I don't think we'd want to put them in your neighborhood or my neighborhood, because we don't have the high crime.
That's ultimately the issue. That's the compromise. Where do you put them, and what limits do you put on the data that's accumulated? Because at the end of the day, you don't have a privacy expectation in a public space. I've heard people try to make the argument that it's an invasion of privacy. No, it's not. You're in a public square. You're in a public space. The question of privacy is, how is that data interpreted, stored, and shared? And that's where I think Congress or the state legislature has to set rules. And it prioritizes the protection of individual privacy, and it has a very transparent process of the information is only kept for a short period of time. It's subject to a warrant, and that it cannot be viewed outside of that very careful chain of custody and it's destroyed on a schedule, vice is kept indefinitely.
Exactly.
That's, again, requires somebody to solve the problem and pass legislation.
It's like if you've got those Google Nest cameras, right? That data is not stored forever. It's stored in the cloud where whoever your monitoring company is. But that stuff gets destroyed. You can't see if somebody, walked in front of your house this morning. You can't go back and look at it, on your phone. Mm-hmm. And
Jackie, is that your dog?
He is having like a moment.
I had my dog in here a minute ago, and I kicked her out because she'd be doing the same thing.
Oh, he's downstairs. So I'm like, but tangential to that, in terms of camera overreach, there's this new thing that they're trying in Montgomery County now too, because I guess they're not grabbing enough money from all the speeding cameras that they put up. They're changing the red light cameras to green light cameras. So if you try to speed through a yellow light, they're going to tax you for that too now.
So I mean, again, I hate these things. You know what? And I got it. They call it a civil penalty, so it doesn't assess points, and there's not criminal liability, so it doesn't necessitate a hearing or traffic court.
It's basically an ATM for the county, is what it is.
It is. But this is why in the past, it would have had to have been observed by a police officer, and they would have to assess your intent or the criminality. Now, this civil offense nonsense where you just get a ticket in the mail that says you were going too fast. I mean, what she just described, the green light camera. What if it's more dangerous to slam your brakes on because someone's right behind you?
And
AAA already did pick that up, but you made a decision based on the safety of the people in your vehicle and their vehicle, and then you get a citation because it's AI generated or it's automated.
And AAA did a study already in Virginia when they had the red light cameras. And by the way, here's something else for you. You notice all the cameras, if this is an incline, they're right here. And the speed limit is 25, unless you're riding your brakes.
And they lowered the speed limits. They lowered the speed limits.
Because they can zap you. And it used to be if you were 1 mile over, you didn't get a ticket. Now it's 1 mile over, 25 miles over. They're still going to send you a ticket.
Actually, I learned it's 12. It's exactly 12.
Is it 12? Okay, But the way when they put them on an incline, even if you're not giving any gas, if you're at 25 miles an hour here, by the time you get here, you're 35, 40, between 35 and 40 at that point. And unless you choose to ride your brakes, I don't know if the state of Maryland or Montgomery County is going to pay for new brakes. You know how much 4 brakes cost in rotors? It's about $1,200.
So that was a part of the innovation corridor, was to force the issue of infrastructure development. I do think at the county and state level, Democrats are trying to make it so hard to drive that people will stop driving.
Yep.
Whether it's the local taxes,
the
bike lanes, all of the things that make it hard. They're trying to force people to alternative means. And part of the innovation corridor was to say, okay, you know what? We're going to generate a lot of property tax income, and we're going to create some of the things that Democrats maybe have wanted to pursue themselves. But in return, we're going to get the infrastructure we've been denied. Expand American Legion Bridge, expand 270, look at the I-70 interchange, expand I-68, and then look at these other corridors as investment areas for the federal government to make them safer and to optimize them for development. It's another problem we're having in Adamstown. I've been up there. You have these massive trucks that are taking up 3/4 of a little 2-lane country road. They did not take into account what was going to happen whenever they laid out these grandiose plans to do what probably needed to happen. And that was the Alcoa brownfield needed to be fixed. It needed investment. But there was a way to phase this through private investment that would have prioritized the needs of local residents and their safety over just blank check, do what you need to do. Thank you for helping.
Yeah, and Chris, you're probably familiar with also Route 15.
Yes.
You notice Route 15 in Maryland, we got so many red lights, including by Mount St. Mary's down there, right? Which there've been countless number of accidents, children, kids going to college, being hit by cars trying to cross Route 15. Why don't we do what Pennsylvania did? Build an overpass, build underpasses, build interchange, get rid of these traffic lights on Route 15, increase the speed limit to 65. Right now it's 55. Nobody drives 55.
Yeah.
But
this is exactly the innovation corridor. It starts with infrastructure. It looks at producing energy, and it creates jobs. And the idea is that we address these long-standing problems that have either been unsolvable or ignored in the name of these vanity projects on the part of a supermajority in Annapolis. There's absolutely no reason why we can't increase the tax base to solve these problems, to leverage federal dollars to upgrade areas that are inherently dangerous or underdeveloped. But we just have to commit to solving them. And I think the Republican Party has an extraordinary opportunity to lead, to actually look at how we're approaching these problems and saying, yeah, we're going to take on the risk of putting our name on the development of economic growth, national security interests, and lean into this because this is what residents need to prosper again. I was sad to see what has happened to farmland across Garrett and Allegheny. I talk to people and they can't run a dairy farm. They can't run any livestock.
Yeah.
They've made it so difficult to have livestock and then any surface water. They've made it so difficult to meet the standards that you have people that are sitting on family farms and they have no option but to look at solar farms because they can't work the land. They can't do anything on it other than sit on it and pay taxes. And that's not an efficient use to allow people to leverage their expertise and skill in furtherance of our collective interest. And that is letting them farm, letting them raise cattle, or ultimately opening up opportunities so that we don't have Annapolis dictating how people are living across the panhandle.
Yeah, and Chris, we're also seeing not only that is there was a case about a dairy farmer outside of Hagerstown, right? He had a dairy farm that was there. Then somebody built a development on the other side of the street. The Maryland Environmental Services tried to have that dairy farm shut down. Why? Because they were complaining about, we're getting brown water as a result in our well because of the farm there. And that's really not what it was. Evidently, we figured it out. The guy had a great attorney who did the legwork and got everything settled. But that is the problem. We've got the government is working against a lot of these farmers.
Yes.
A lot, they're regulating. They go, oh, you can't plant, you can't do this, and you can't do, they're calling. I remember back in the 90s, they were calling irrigation ditches wetlands. They were calling rice paddies wetlands.
Yeah.
The famous case is Ocean Spray, their cranberry bogs. Mm-hmm. They declared those wetlands. Those aren't wetlands. They're only bogs there because Ocean Spray put them there.
They're man-made. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. And that gets back to the Democrats doing things that are vanity projects, wanting to be the California of the East, realizing that when you try to implement policy that maybe doesn't even work in California, that has one of the biggest economies in the globe, you can diversify a lot of misguided policy when you're talking about California and the resources that it has. But when you take that template and you plug it into Maryland, where we have this incredible environment, we've got everything from the Eastern Shore to the mountains of Western Maryland, but you only have 4 million people. You've got this tiny economy versus what you have in California. So a bad policy in California is devastating in Maryland. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that when you claim to be the California of the East, you're going to fail. And we're seeing the result of those failures time and time again across misguided efforts, vanity projects, and everything in between.
I mean, this whole green energy nonsense is the reason we're paying so much more for electricity. If we left Reggie, we'd be fine.
But look, there's some policies that California has had proposed and rolled out in the past couple of weeks, and you don't want to be California. They're now proposing in LA having taxpayer-funded sex shacks for homeless people. Because apparently privacy to masturbate is a right. It's a human right.
Well, that's a whole other issue of we create these rights out of thin air, and somehow we put legal force behind them and think that we were doing something good. And in fact, all we're doing is interfering with other people's liberty and freedom. We're imposing something that is an individual solution and thinking that it will work well collectively. And that's just mismanagement. That's bad leadership. And I always laugh about California. My favorite duty station in the Marine Corps was Camp Pendleton. I was on the 13th MEU. If you've been there, Del Mar Boat Basin might be the best place to be stationed on that base. And you're outside of San Diego, living in San Luis Hills. But I can tell you, after 3 years there, I was blown away by the politics, by the hypocrisy, by the not in my backyard approach to Democrat policies. in how they want to virtue signal, but they don't want to bear the consequences of any of these things. And yet here we are in Maryland trying to double down on misguided California policy and making it only exponentially worse here on the East Coast.
Yep.
And, as a result of these policies, families are leaving Maryland. Okay. Families, I've talked to 3 people that I know that are seriously thinking of moving out of the state. They want to move. I had this one friend who goes, I work in Baltimore. I could move to York or Chambersburg and be at my office in 45 minutes. My cost of a house is going to be a third of what I'm paying in Baltimore County. You could buy a house. You could buy a nice 5-bedroom home in Chambersburg or York for roughly about $350,000. A nice home. You can't get a nice home for $350,000 in Baltimore County.
And at times I wonder
in those parts of Maryland for that.
Now I think you might be able to get something, or the Eastern Shore maybe.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you can only make it uncomfortable to the point where people will then start voting with their feet. And this idea that you're going to have these increased fees and taxes, and every one of them is like it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. And that at some point you realize it's just not sustainable. You can't raise a family in Maryland. You can't expect to have the opportunities for your kids that you had because Maryland is working against the well-being of hardworking families. It's almost impossible to start a business. It's almost impossible to think that a young person starting out is going to have a job that's going to allow them to buy a house, get married, and start a family. And if you don't invest in people and you invest in these ridiculous vanity projects, at some point you're going to run out of other people's money. And that's what we're seeing. Maryland continues down this path. And I'm amazed that I talk to smart people, and yet they see the flaw in the logic, and yet they continue to vote these same people in because it either makes them feel good about some level of guilt that they carry, or they think it's the right thing. I don't know, quite honestly. It's irrational, but I don't understand the voting habits that some folks carry with them, because they'll leave one area, Montgomery County, move to Frederick, and bring their bad policy and politics with them.
Yes.
There's a level of cognitive dissonance that is beyond me.
That I love that phrase captures it, right?
And they're still going to vote the same way.
Yep.
I mean, Neil Bort said it best. He goes, you got these people that come from New York. They come to Florida. They go, oh, look, you got clean streets. It's beautiful. Everything's, taxes are low. But they keep voting the way they voted in New York, and they ruin beautiful. But the good thing about Florida is they still outnumber the Democrats. Like I remember our neighborhood association, some Long Island liberal had a problem with some guy flying the American flag and the Trump flag, right? And he made a fuss. The next day, everybody had a Trump flag flying out of their house in front of their houses.
Buddy, you are not in New York.
Yeah.
But I've shared this story that we were in Florida before I deployed, and then I met Diddy and the kids in Maryland, and it was night and day in terms of how the COVID response was in Florida. The kids were back to school, they were back in sports, things had returned to normal, and then we arrive here, and people are wearing 2 masks in a car by themselves. Teachers are not not showing up, going to teach in schools. They're still doing the homeschooling thing. And it was amazing to me just how folks in Maryland have doubled down on this risk-averse, put your head down and just don't ask questions and trust in these misguided vanity projects, and somehow that'll make everything okay. Because we're on a downward spiral, and if we don't do something to correct this, I don't know how Maryland recovers, because we're only going to get further and further behind in the AI economy that requires energy, it requires manufacturing, and it requires some level of investment in people, not just extracting more taxes and fees from them.
Yeah.
Yep. And we are at almost 5 minutes. So why don't we now go to basically this is the point where we talk about anything your work, on any places you're doing speaking engagements, anything going on. But and one last thought, by the way, about data centers. If they don't build here, they're going to build somewhere else, those data centers. Wouldn't we rather get the revenue from data centers here than let the money go somewhere else, like Tennessee, where they're using that money to eliminate property taxes?
Yep.
And it's not just the property tax revenue, it's the deliberate planning. Like, we can reinvent the economy around our federal highway network, our incredible university and vocational school network, and we can take advantage of the resources that are somewhat unique to Maryland. And if we do so in a deliberate way and we plan to an outcome, we will not only benefit the national security priorities and the infrastructure needs that we have regionally and as a state, you will actually create the prosperity that most Marylanders have not experienced in decades. It would be the first time that there would be not only just the construction jobs, but then the operations and management jobs, but then the AI and quantum research, the advanced manufacturing, all of the compounding benefits then of restaurants and services that support a growing economy. But it does require taking that first step into the unknown and saying, okay, we're not just going to bury our head in the sand. We're going to lead on this issue, and we're going to make the lives of Marylanders much, much better. I wish I had more things to talk about, but the Innovation Corridor, turning that into a PAC, I'm looking at trying to sort of put this under an umbrella of doing veterans advocacy and looking at assisting veterans with their VA claims and some of the support that they need. I mean, after 20 years of deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq, veterans are still struggling. We're doing a better job, but you can't do enough, in my opinion. Some of the best people I will ever know were young Marines that were deployed before they could even legally drink a beer in the United States. And if we don't spend a lifetime trying to help them put their lives back together, I don't feel like we're doing enough. So I'm looking at trying to either put my Innovation Corridor under a Veterans Assistance PAC as an extension of the economic development that would be not only for Maryland residents, but also would have a carve out for veterans assistance. So I'm looking at just different ways to kind of stay involved in this discussion of economic development, looking at leading in the AI economy, and then most importantly, setting the conditions so that communities can make informed decisions about this. And that would allow us to raise money, do education and outreach, and hopefully help shape policy in an informed and meaningful way. And I think sometimes as a non-candidate, you can actually move the ball or move the needle more because you're not beholden to public opinion, but you can focus on developing an issue and educating folks that can then make a decision about who they want to elect and how they want their tax dollars to be spent. But I'm also looking for a job. I got to grow up and get a job all of a sudden, after all this time in the Marine Corps and running for office. So I'm looking at a couple of different options in DC and with the administration, mostly in the national security and the foreign policy space. I'm currently working as an unpaid consultant with one or two different organizations to help maintain my security clearance. What'll happen, and you know this, Neil or Dwight, it'll lapse after a certain amount of time.
Yep.
So I'm trying to ensure that I maintain an active security clearance, and then if I can find a position in the Department of War or with a think tank, or if I can start publishing on the Innovation Corridor in the national security alignment to economic development, I think there's a real opportunity there to have articles and to publish white papers about it.
Awesome.
Cool. So Jackie, you have something coming up, right?
I do, yeah. The Maryland YRs are having our big America 250 Red, White, and Barbecue, and that's going to be in Iamsville, Maryland, and Frederick County on September 27th. It's going to be from 2 to 6 p.m. It's also going to be doubling or tripling as our day of service and our annual convention. So we're going to be focusing on the DDA cuts that happened in the budget in Maryland last year, and bringing light to what that funding did for disability services in the state. And a portion of the proceeds will be going back to disability services across the state of Maryland. So we'd love your support. If you know anybody who wants to come, it's family friendly. Kids under 5 come free. Kids under 12 are like $5. Adults are $30 to $25 if you're YR, non-YR. So we'd love to have as many people as possible come out and just have a good time and celebrate with us.
Jack, your Christmas party was fantastic. I think you remember my family got split up.
Same place.
Well, is it really?
Yeah.
That is a great venue. But you remember that night I showed up with Izzy and Lainey and Abe because Diddy and Zara they got stuck on a recruiting trip, but we had a great time. They still talk about that.
I'm looking forward to this one because it's during the day. We get to actually use like the petting farm and everything. So it's going to be a really good time. What
did you have, like candy canes or dipping chocolate?
We had a hot chocolate bar, which I had been talking about for years. I'm like, I want a hot chocolate bar.
Yeah.
That's a part of it. So
Izzy and Lainey love that. That was like their favorite thing of the year.
I love that. Yeah, we're doing ours at the Westin in Annapolis this year, December 19th. So if people want to mark their calendars early. So
better location.
Yeah, further location, but I'll take it.
Dwight, the other thing I was going to be doing on September 11th, I'll be riding in DC for a memorial ride.
Oh, nice!
It's for it's like a couple of different biker groups are doing it, but I'm looking forward to that, and I'll definitely post some pictures about that because it's amazing to think that we're now a generation removed from September 11th.
Yeah.
And so you've had families and individuals that made enormous sacrifices over the last 25 years, and now you have people that grew up not ever having really had to think about those things. So I will be spending some time in September doing everything I can to highlight and really celebrate the incredible lives of folks that have made sacrifices and have made extraordinary commitment to our country throughout September.
Yeah, it's more important than ever that we educate on that. And look what New York has done 25 years after.
We have a candidate running in Michigan who says we deserve his buddy says we deserve 9/11. Also, next Thursday's Pizza and Politics, our speaker, it's going to be Fitzgerald Mofor. He is speaking. He's a candidate in District 9A. And so come on out. It's at the Only Mama Lucia's at 6:30. The pizza's really good, so worth coming out for the pizza. And that's all I've got. Thank you. And thank you, Chris, for being a guest.
Thank you.
Great discussion. I'll come back anytime. So thank you so much.
And we'll be back next week.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Let's go down to Missoni, where Italian cuisine shines. Let's go down to Missoni's, we'll have a good